Good evening, barflies and lounge lizards, and tonight we'll be discussing my favorite post-apocalypse films. Now let me tell you, this was a tough list to make. Turns out I like so many post-apocalyptic films. I've even covered some on the channel previously, like She, which would have been on this list had I not done a full review of it already. But I will say in advance, there will be no Planet of the Apes films in this episode. Even though they're some of my favorites, probably my favorite post-apocalyptic films. I've covered them so much already on different episodes, I kind of wanted to shine the spotlight on some stuff I haven't talked about before. And number 5 on the list is America 3000 from 1986, directed by David Engelbach and released by the great Cannon Films. And America 3000 is set 900 years after a nuclear war between the US and Russia, it was the 80s after all, and it takes place in a world where women are dominant, Amazon-like warriors, and the men are their slaves. Sounds like my usual Saturday night. It tells the story of a male former slave named Corvus as he and the Amazon Queen try to bring peace between the two rival tribes. But where this one really stands out is rather than the dark, gritty, post-apocalyptic film you're used to, this one's a lighthearted comedy. It's actually really entertaining and really quirky. There's a Sasquatch-esque character named Arg the Awful. Corvus becomes the president. It's really a fun time. Now, really my only quibble with the film, and reason it's not higher in the ranking, it's an unusual stylistic choice they took with the dialogue. And being the future, and I guess it is definitely creative, they decided to make up some of their own slang. And so in the early parts of the film, you really don't know what the heck they're saying at some of the times. Not enough that you can't follow the film, but I just wanted to put that out there, let you know what you're getting into if you watch this one. Again, not enough to detract from the film, which, by the way, was originally called Thunder Women. And number 4 on the list, and it may come as a surprise, is Robot Monster from 1953, directed by Phil Tucker. And Robot Monster tells the story of the heroic, romantic anti-hero, the Ro-Man, also known as the Robot Monster, who comes to destroy humanity. And he essentially does, leaving only 8 survivors in the entire world, but he just happens to fall for one of the 8, and thus one of the greatest love stories of our time truly begins. A lot of people don't realize that this was an early post-apocalyptic film, but wiping out everyone but 8, that definitely counts, and I think it really gets overshadowed by its infamy and the extremely unique alien design. And of course the Mystery Science Theater 3000 parody. But this is actually a rather dark, grim take on an alien invasion. Low budget or not, it's extremely entertaining and creative and really well done. They did a lot with the tiny budget that they had. Now, I actually saw this one for the first time on TV in 3D. It was actually a promotion our local TV station was having with, I believe it was 7-Eleven. You go to 7-Eleven, get your Robot Monster 3D glasses, come home, watch it on TV, and have great memories from that. And we'll always have a strong fondness for this movie, all it being good aside, just for that element to it. Now, as to the aforementioned Ro-Man's design, he was originally supposed to be a much more robotic being, but they just simply couldn't afford it in the budget. So George Barrows, who was the suit actor within the Ro-Man, actually built the gorilla portion himself, and he would go on to use it in Gorilla at Large from 1954. And number 3 on the list is The Omega Man from 1971, directed by Boris Sagal. Based on the book I Am Legend by Richard Matheson, The Omega Man stars Charlton Heston as possibly the lone survivor of a global pandemic that has wiped out a large portion of humanity and turns what remains, other than the Heston, into vampire-like, pasty-faced creatures that aren't too keen on good old Chuck running around. Well, if that sounds familiar, it's because this is actually the second adaptation of the same story. The first being Vincent Price's Last Man on Earth. But let me tell you, I love both. And even though it's the same concept, they're different enough to be 2 totally different movies. Really just kind of the theme is the same, and that's it. Like, one does not take away from the other. They go side by side really well. And let me tell you, it is so 70s. And even though it only came out in 71, it's set in 77, and it feels and looks like 77. Very cool, very groovy. And it's got really good music, and Charlton Heston is his wonderfully Heston-y self in this one. He's basically Taylor. So if you want to see Taylor in a different setup, that's this one. Now in the book, the plague came from bats and mosquitoes, where in the film it's a side effect of biological warfare. This is one I hadn't seen until fairly recently because I hold the original, The Last Man on Earth, so dear, and seeing this one, like I said, I was very impressed, very pleased, and they hold up well together. And on that, I think you should take some kind of break.
Bizarre encounters. Call and hear real people as they come face to face with bizarre encounters. Are they from next door, or are they from... If you only make one phone call in your life, make it to Bizarre Encounters.
$2 first minute, 45 cents additional minutes. If you're under 18, get your parents' permission to call.
You can make the good guys better. Armed force,
Roll 'em!
you can make the bad guys badder. Sawboss,
Roll 'em into battle!
wheel, warriors, quick changing fighting machines.
Bad guys approaching! Quick, stack and attack!
You can stack, and attack with wheel, warriors.
Wheel Warriors vehicles each sold separately. Some parts not for use with some toys. New from Mattel.
And we're back with number 2 on the list, and that is World Gone Wild from 1988, directed by Lee H. Katzin. Starring Michael Paré and Bruce Dern, World Gone Wild is essentially a post-apocalyptic take on The Seven Samurai, or Magnificent Seven, depending how you want to look at it. In a world where water is extremely scarce, a small village that actually has water hires a group of mercenaries to defend themselves against a very creepy religious cult led by Adam Ant. Yep, the Adam Ant. No, he does not wear the cool makeup, unfortunately. But it has a cool Western vibe to it and dark humor. It really stands out in the genre. Whereas it's not as light and fun as America 3000, there's definitely kind of an 80s rocket action feel to this one. Now this was an absolute favorite of mine as a kid. I taped it off cable, and it's one of those ones, and I'm sure anyone from the VHS generation remembers this, you would tape a movie and just watch it over and over and over again. Watch it, rewind it, watch it again. So this one got a lot of viewing in my household. And it has one of the things that make every single movie just that much better, and that is a theme song.
Can this really hurt in a world gone wild?
Movies need a theme song that mentions the name of the movie in the theme song, or how are you going to know what you're watching? I mean, it's that simple. And if you're not sold already by how great this movie is, it has an amazing part by Julius Carry III, aka Sho'nuff and Lord Bowler from Briscoe County Jr. Talk about something that makes every movie just that much better, Julius Carry III. Now in the film, the cult, the evil Adam Ant cult, is based on the teachings of Charles Manson. You actually see Charles Manson's name on a book they're looking at, kind of their Bible. But there's a pretty persistent rumor out there that the cult was originally based on Scientology, but the Scientologists got word of this and threatened a lawsuit, so they quickly changed it to Charles Manson. And now it's time for an honorable mention, and that's Mad Max, or even The Road Warrior. And I knew I had to mention Mad Max, because if I didn't, angry randos would be even angrier at me than usual for talking about my favorite movies instead of theirs. But as I often say, the big reason why I do this channel is to turn people on to things they haven't seen before. And if you haven't seen Mad Max, you're probably not watching this video. And number 1 on the list is Vampire Hunter D from 1985, directed by Toyo Ashida. Billed as a dark future science fiction romance, Vampire Hunter D tells the story of a lone vampire hunter, D, in the distant future coming to a small village in order to slay an ancient vampire and to save the young woman who is to be the vampire's next victim. Now this one's often called a horror anime, and yes, there is that element to it, he's fighting monsters and such, but I'd say it's much more a western than it is a horror film. And I think it's what directly led to my love of spaghetti westerns and the Weird West in general. It's really unique in every aspect. The world design alone is a great mixture of Hammer horror Euro vibes with the Wild West, but with touches of high technology. There's laser rifles and cyborg horses. Then there's the character design. The monsters, the mutants, they're all extremely unique. And Dee even has a sentient parasite that lives in his hand. So that tells you something. I saw this one for the first time in the early 90s on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it really changed everything. I had no idea an animated film could look that good and really enthrall me in the way that it did. And it's easily one of my favorite films of all time, top 10 without a doubt. And it's still one of the best looking animations I've ever seen. Now, Vampire Hunter D was based on a book of the same name, which was first published in 1983, and it was the first book in a long-running series that is still running to this day. As I said, this is one of my favorite films of all time. If you're in the Weird West type stuff, I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't. But though, look for the original DVD release if you can. They released it on Blu-ray not terribly long ago, but they completely redid the dub. And part of just how good it was the phenomenal voice talent and just the way the voices were. To completely change that for some reason, it kind of changes the feel of the film, and definitely stick with that original dub. And that's all the time we have for this week. Please like, comment, subscribe, and keep it wacky.